We all know the names: Patton, Eisenhower, MacArthur. We know the battles, too: Normandy, Iwo Jima, the Bulge. These are the titans of history, the generals and the grand strategies that defined the Second World War. But behind those headlines, far from the famous generals, are the stories you don't know. The sagas of individual men and legendary units whose courage forged history in the crucible of the world's greatest conflict. These are the stories of America's truest heroes, the ones who faced the fire on the ground, in the air, and at sea. These are the accounts of ordinary men who, when faced with truly impossible odds, simply chose to do the extraordinary. Picture this: the Battle of the Bulge. December 1944. In the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the American lines are stretched to their breaking point by a surprise German offensive. For the men of Company the Farn, 120th Infantry, the world has shrunk to a brutal landscape of snow, shellfire, and sheer survival. On December 23rd, near Petit Coup, Belgium, they're hopelessly pinned down. Heavy machine gun and small arms fire pours from a German-held house just 200 yards away, backed by a relentless barrage of mortars and tank shells. The advance has completely stalled. Men are dying. And this is where the story takes a turn. Amidst the chaos, one man decides he's had enough. Staff Sergeant Paul L. Bolden, a 22-year-old from Alabama, wasn't a general looking at a map. He was a non-commissioned officer on the ground, and his men were being slaughtered. On his own initiative, he and another soldier, Technical Sergeant Russell Snowd, decide to do the unthinkable. They move toward the enemy fire. Creeping forward under a hail of bullets that thudded into the snow and trees around them, they make it to a spot across the street from the enemy stronghold. From there, Bolden starts his assault. He pulls the pins from 2 grenades, one fragmentation, one white phosphorus, and hurls them through a window. The explosions rock the house, creating a brief, violent storm of smoke and shrapnel. But Bolden isn't done. He knows the enemy inside are hardened SS troopers, 35 of them, and they won't give up easily. In a moment of pure, magnificent audacity, he doesn't wait for covering fire. He rushes the front door, kicks it open, and unleashes a torrent of fire from his submachine gun into the disoriented soldiers inside. 20 Germans fall before a burst of return fire rips through Bolden, hitting him in the shoulder, chest, and stomach. That same burst kills his comrade, Sergeant Snowd, across the street. Grievously wounded, Bolden stumbles back from the house. He waits, expecting the survivors to surrender. But the house is silent. The firing has stopped, but the threat isn't gone. At this point, any sane person would have sought medical aid, their duty more than fulfilled. But Paul Bolden wasn't just any person. Realizing the remaining SS troopers would just reorganize and keep fighting, he summons what little strength he has left. Ignoring the searing pain, he stands up, walks back into the house he was just shot in, and opens fire again. He methodically clears the building, killing the last 15 enemy soldiers before his ammunition finally runs out. One man, one house, 35 enemy soldiers eliminated. The path for his company was cleared. For this incredible act of valor, Staff Sergeant Paul L. Bolden was awarded the Medal of Honor. His story is a raw testament to the idea that sometimes the course of a battle isn't changed by a map, but by the sheer indomitable will of a single soldier who just refuses to back down. Now, let's head to the vast blue expanse of the Pacific, where a different kind of hero was making his name. He didn't command troops on the ground, but a machine in the sky, the P-38 Lightning. What made Bong a legend wasn't just his staggering kill count, but his almost unnatural talent for flying. He'd learned to fly in a civilian program in college before joining the Army Air Corps in 1941. His instructors quickly realized he was a natural, a pilot who flew by instinct and feel, not by the book. In fact, his early career was marked by a bit of a rebellious streak. He was once grounded for buzzing a residential house and looping the loop around the Golden Gate Bridge. but it was that very audacity that made him so lethal in combat. Sent to the Pacific in late 1942, Bong began his meteoric rise. Unlike many pilots who relied on complex maneuvers, Bong's method was deceptively simple. He would get as close as possible to his target, often closing to within a few hundred yards, before unleashing a devastatingly accurate burst of fire. It was an aggressive tactic, and it worked. By April 1943, he was a double ace with 10 confirmed kills. In one dogfight, while outnumbered, he led his flight in an attack that downed 11 Japanese planes without a single American loss. He got 4 of them himself. The press back home turned him into a national hero, a baby-faced kid from the Midwest who was taking on the entire Japanese Air Force. By April 1944, he had surpassed World War I hero Eddie Rickenbacker's record of 26 kills. The Army, terrified of losing such a morale-boosting figure, tried to pull him from combat. His commander, General George C. Kenney, eventually assigned him as a gunnery instructor, with strict orders not to seek out combat. But for Bong, flying was fighting. He just kept defending himself all the way into the history books, adding another 13 kills to his tally. In December 1944, General Douglas MacArthur himself presented Major Richard Bong with the Medal of Honor. He was finally sent home for good, a living legend at just 24 years old. Tragically, his story doesn't end in combat, but in a fiery accident. While serving as a test pilot for America's first jet fighter, the P-80 Shooting Star, Bong was killed when his aircraft's fuel pump malfunctioned on takeoff in August 1945. He died on the same day the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a poignant end for the man who had mastered propeller combat just as a new age of warfare was dawning. Some heroes fight with a rifle, others fight with something far more powerful. This is the story of a man who went to war armed only with his faith and a medical kit. Corporal Desmond Doss. A devout Seventh-day Adventist, Doss was a conscientious objector. He believed the war was just, but that killing for him was wrong. He enlisted as a medic, but his refusal to carry a weapon, or even to train on Saturdays, his Sabbath, made him an outcast. His fellow soldiers in the 77th Infantry Division harassed him, called him a coward, and tried to get him discharged. They just couldn't understand. How could a man who wouldn't fight possibly be a soldier? They were about to find out. The stage for Doss's legend was the bloody battle for Okinawa in the spring of 1945. His unit was ordered to capture a terrifying 400-foot-high cliff known as the Maida Escarpment. The soldiers had a nickname for it, Hacksaw Ridge. At the top, thousands of Japanese soldiers were dug into a labyrinth of caves and pillboxes, ready to unleash hell. On May 5th, the Americans launched their assault, climbing cargo nets up the cliff face, straight into a cataclysmic barrage of artillery and machine gun fire. The attack was a slaughter. The Americans were driven back down the cliff, leaving behind roughly 75 wounded men on the fire-swept summit. But one man refused to retreat. Desmond Doss stayed with the wounded. For the next several hours, under constant, unrelenting enemy fire, Doss did the impossible. He ran from one fallen soldier to another, patching their wounds as bullets and mortars exploded all around him. Then, one by one, he dragged them to the edge of the cliff and lowered them to safety using a rope sling he had figured out on the spot. With each man he saved, he prayed a simple, desperate prayer. Lord, please help me get one more. He lowered man after man, including many of the same soldiers who had once mocked him for his beliefs. By the time he was done, he had single-handedly rescued an estimated 75 men from Hacksaw Ridge. And his heroism didn't stop there. He stayed in the fight for 2 more weeks, continuing to risk his life to save others. He was eventually wounded by a grenade, and while being carried off the battlefield, he actually gave up his spot on the litter for another wounded man. Before he could finally be evacuated, a sniper's bullet shattered his arm. For his incredible bravery, Corporal Desmond Doss became the first conscientious objector to ever receive the Medal of Honor. His story challenges our very definition of courage. He proved that heroism isn't only about taking a life, but about saving one, and that the strongest weapon on any battlefield can be an unwavering refusal to abandon your fellow man. These stories of individual courage are really the bedrock of American legend. If you're finding this history as compelling as I do, consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It really helps us bring more of these incredible sagas to light, more than you know. Now let's get back to the fight. Beyond individual heroes, there were entire units whose collective valor became the stuff of legend, and none is more remarkable than the 402nd Regimental Combat Team. Comprised almost entirely of second-generation Japanese Americans, or Nisei, this unit fought two wars, one against the Axis powers in Europe and another against prejudice back home. When the call for volunteers went out in early 1943, more than 12,000 Nisei signed up. Many of them were from Hawaii. Others volunteered from the internment camps where their own families were being held by the U.S. government. Their motto came from Hawaiian slang, "Go for broke," meaning to risk everything on a single roll of the dice. And that is exactly what they did. Deployed to Europe in 1944, the 442nd, which included the already decorated 100th Infantry Battalion, quickly earned a reputation for being a ferocious fighting force. They fought their way up through Italy, but their defining moment came in the cold, dense forests of the Vosges Mountains in France in October 1944. There, the 1st Battalion of the 141st Infantry Regiment, a unit from Texas, had been cut off and surrounded by German forces. They became known as the Lost Battalion. After two other friendly battalions failed to break through, the 442nd was called in. The fight that followed was brutal. The terrain was a nightmare of mud, thick trees, and freezing rain, all while under withering German artillery and machine gun fire. For 5 agonizing days, the 442nd threw themselves against heavily fortified German positions. The fighting was often hand-to-hand, a desperate, bloody struggle for every foxhole. The casualty rates were staggering. In order to rescue the 2-on-1 men of the Lost Battalion, the 442nd suffered over 800 casualties of their own. In some companies, so few men were left standing they had to be merged with others. But on October 30th, they finally broke through. The Lost Battalion was saved. When one of the Texan officers asked why they had kept coming, one of the Nisei soldiers simply replied that their orders were to rescue them. The story of these Nisei soldiers sacrificing so much to save their fellow Americans, all while their own families were unjustly imprisoned, is one of the most powerful and poignant of the entire war. By the war's end, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team had become the most decorated unit in U.S. military history for its size and length of service. Its men earned over 18,000 individual decorations, including 21 Medals of Honor and 7 Presidential Unit citations. They had gone for broke, and in doing so, had proven their loyalty and courage beyond all doubt, carving out a legacy of honor that shames the prejudice they ever faced. Heroism isn't always found in victory. Sometimes it's revealed most profoundly in moments of catastrophic defeat. On the morning of December 7, 1941, Captain Mervyn Bennion stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS West Virginia, moored in Pearl Harbor. That peaceful Sunday morning was shattered when Japanese torpedoes slammed into the side of his battleship. Within moments of the surprise attack, as Bennion commanded his crew and directed efforts to keep the ship from capsizing, shrapnel from a bomb that hit the nearby USS Tennessee tore into his abdomen. It was a mortal wound. Sailors, including Mess Attendant Second Class Doris Miller, rushed to his side, trying to move him to a first aid station. Bennion refused. Clutching his devastating wound, he remained on the bridge, his only concern being the fight to save his ship and his crew. He forcefully protested any attempt to carry him away from his post. As fires raged and explosions rocked the sinking vessel, Captain Bennion continued to command, barking out orders and receiving reports as long as he could. He ordered his men to leave him, to save themselves. He fought through unimaginable pain just to do his duty until the very end. Finally, his strength gave out, and he collapsed, dying on the bridge of the ship he refused to abandon. Of the 106 crewmen killed on the West Virginia that day, their captain was among them. For his conspicuous devotion to duty, extraordinary courage, and complete disregard of his own life, Captain Mervyn Bennion was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. He was one of the very first heroes of America's war, a man whose final moments set a standard of leadership and sacrifice that would define the American spirit in the long years of conflict that lay ahead. His legacy, forged in the fire and chaos of Pearl Harbor, is a solemn reminder that leadership isn't about saving yourself. It's about giving everything for those you lead. From the frozen forests of Belgium to the volcanic sands of the Pacific, from the skies over New Guinea to the burning decks at Pearl Harbor, the story of America in World War II is written in the actions of these men and countless others like them. They were farm boys, factory workers, and students. They came from every corner of the nation and every walk of life. In all, 472 Americans were awarded the Medal of Honor during the war, many given posthumously as a final recognition for the ultimate sacrifice. These stories matter. They're more than just history lessons about battles won and lost. They are a profound testament to the human capacity for courage in the face of unimaginable terror. They show us that heroes aren't born. They are forged in moments of crisis, when the choice is between survival and sacrifice, between fear and duty. They remind us that the legacy of a nation isn't just defined by its leaders, but by the character and honor of its ordinary citizens who answer the call, go above and beyond, and leave a legacy of heroism that continues to inspire. If these stories of America's heroes moved you, please share this video and leave a comment below with a story of a hero you admire. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the defining moments of history. Thanks for watching.